Kia ora, everybody. Welcome to the ACE RMO 2024 Canterbury webinar. My name is Georgina. I'm your ACE RMO consultant. We're going to start off with the opening karakia, and then I'll give everyone a brief outline of today's webinar. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, he hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, Tihei Moriora. So thank you to everyone for taking the time to join today's webinar. We'll move on to the panelist introductions very shortly. During this webinar, we will have an exciting video to share with you guys, and that's followed by a presentation presented by our panelists. And then our RMOs will tell you a bit more about the experiences working as a PGY1 at the region. Towards the end of the webinar, we will have a live Q&A session, and finally we'll close off with a closing karakia. Just a reminder, all questions can be dropped in the Q&A box below your screen. You can ask a question now if you have a burning question, but these questions will only be looked at towards the end of the webinar.
Kia ora koutou. Welcome to the 2024 Waitaha Canterbury ACE webinar. My name is Amanda Challenger. I'm the RMO Workforce Manager.
Kia ora everybody, my name's Carl Hazy. I'm the Operations Team Leader for the Resident Doctors Support Team.
Kia ora everybody, I'm Brooke and I am the RMO Recruitment Coordinator for Canterbury.
Kia ora, ko Sarah Biddle toko ingoa. I am a PGY2 here at Canterbury.
Kia ora, I'm Ollie Gent. I'm a PGY1 House Officer here at Canterbury.
And kia ora, I'm Giovanni Losco. I'm a urologist, but I'm also one of the pre-vocational educational supervisors here in Waitaha, Canterbury.
Thank you so much and welcome again. We'll move on to the video now.
I knew I wanted to work at a larger centre because there's a lot of opportunities here to work for different specialties. There's great mentors here as well and lots of research happening if you want to get involved with that. Christchurch also has some great facilities here and great access to things like radiology, and also in terms of like teaching, where we have lots of like simulation sessions, which was really good. And then there's also like a new outpatients building as well.
Yeah, I'm going to stare into the camera and be like, hi to everyone at home. So I came over to New Zealand on my own and initially thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? I don't know anybody. And then I went down to the RDST office a week before I started work, was made to feel very welcome, got told where to find a place to live, where to go out for dinner, what different sports clubs you could join.
You know, we have the RDST and people like that who actually organised a whole week of orientation.
We had a week-long orientation where they were going through things that might be different or might be similar to what we'd have been used to at home.
When I started on the first few weeks, we had a lot of support from other PGY2 house officers.
They ran through cases, you know, you have a septic patient, what are you going to do? And just giving us helpful advice. I thought that was quite good.
So it was actually a really easy transition.
So there's a real emphasis on ongoing learning at the CDHB.
The Metu teaching sessions were really good.
Metu provides lots of teaching opportunities for PGY1s and 2s.
All of the house officers come together and we learn about a wide variety of topics from experts in the field.
And there was a really good variety of teaching sessions coming from like both medical and surgical sides, as well as having a lot of procedural teaching sessions as well.
I have found the RDST really easy to work with.
They were so helpful from day one, I think nearly a year ago now when I first applied.
They are very good at working with you and allocating leave and giving you the placements that you preference.
We always know where to go if we've got any issues with anything regarding work or just general life advice.
Spend a lot of time in that office.
We do.
A really special thing that we have in the CDHB is the CTCs, so they're the clinical nurse coordinators, and they're actually like really experienced senior nurses who do help deal with situations. They've seen a lot of it before. If you've ever got questions, they're a really great resource to go to.
The CTCs are probably one of my favourite things about the DHBs.
We love the CTCs.
They're so great. They triage all of your jobs on the on-call shifts. They're very protective over the doctors, I find.
Yeah.
So switched on and so supportive.
We have PGY2 house officers who wear snazzy checkmate lanyards, which means that they are very willing to be asked for help if you need anything.
Having worked for the NHS and the HSE, that the work-life balance is something I thought I was prepared for a difference, but I wasn't.
The vibe that the central city has and all the things that are popping up, I think it's a really great place to live long term and sort of be able to raise a family.
There's lots of places to eat out. The hills are right there, there's beaches right there.
I mean, there's a botanical gardens literally just around the corner from the hospital. Sometimes when I've had a really stressful day on oncology or something like that, I would just literally go on a half an hour walk in the botanical gardens.
New things are coming up all the time, like the Riverside markets.
And it's also a really great base if you're interested in the outdoors. There's so much that you can get to.
You can ski one day, you can surf the next day. There's just
so much to do.
I like lots about Christchurch, so I could rave and rant about it. But
and there's lots of things happening, so I think it's a really great place to be.
Just get on and do it.
That everyone,
the best decision I've ever made.
Absolutely.
I would highly recommend working at the CDHB. It's a very friendly and supportive environment to work in. There's a wide variety of specialties to get involved in, and it's a beautiful city. So you, come to the CDHB.
That's awesome. Yeah.
As mentioned in that video a few times, we are the resident doctor support team, which is a fancy name for an RMO unit. Right, thank you. So Carl, Brooke and myself form part of a 13-person team down in the RMO office. We share the office with the Medical Education and Training Unit, which we'll hear a little bit about soon. Right, so what exactly does the RDST do? So we manage all the recruitment and onboarding and all the rotations for roughly 650 RMOs. We coordinate about 70% of all the rosters, manage all your leave approvals. We're sort of a go-to for all RMO related matters such as your lunches, your car parks, anything you need, we're there to help.
So there are 18 hospitals and facilities that make up the Canterbury District, and this stems from Ashburton all the way to the Chatham Islands. We are the second largest district within Te Whatu Ora, so I'll just run through our main ones here for you. So we have Waipapa, which is our new main building, which opened in 2020, and this is where we have ED, ICU, all of our surgical wards and our theatres. Then we have Burwood Hospital, which is our older person's health rehab service. So this is about a 20-minute drive north of our main campus, so north of Waipapa. And then Hillmorton, this is our specialist mental health service. So this is about a 15-minute bike ride from Waipapa as well. So we have a brand new building at Hillmorton, which is the image there that you'll see, and that opened up last year. And then we also have women's and children's, which is right beside Waipapa, and this is obviously our ONG pediatrics NICU wards. And then we also recruit out to Ashburton. So this is about an hour to an hour 15 drive south from Christchurch. So this would count towards your community-based run, and it has about 48 beds, so it's quite a small centre. And then another one we have is our Christchurch outpatients, which is across the road from Waipapa. And this is where all new appointments are made, where follow-ups are, and they see around 600 patients per day in outpatients.
Right, thank you, Brooke. So I guess the burning question we should start with is how your application is considered. So the first thing I'd encourage you to do is provide a detailed cover letter. This is a great opportunity to tell us why Christchurch is your top pick. If you've got family here, connections here, we like to support PGY1, so having family close or friends on hand is always great for your first year. If you're a late start, this is a great place to tell us what the reason for that is so that we can try and accommodate you. The next thing we consider is reference checks. So we require 3 referees. And this is put into our final section, which is the rankings. So the rankings are made up of, it's part of the spreadsheet and the pack that we received from ACE. Canterbury put a lot of emphasis on professionalism and behavioural skills. So from here, we consider all of the rankings and we proceed to offers on the 2nd of September. Following receiving an offer and acceptance, you'll receive a link from us with a survey where you'll be able to preference your runs for the 2025 RMO year.
So I'm here, guys, to run through the runs that are available to you as a first-year house officer and then also as a second year. So we have acute psychiatry, which as Brooke mentioned is based at Hillmorton Hospital, about 15 minutes from here. Then based here at Christchurch campus, we have the acute stroke unit runs in cardiology, gastro, general medicine, general surgery, neurology, neurosurgery now. We've got older person's health runs, which are based over at Burwood Hospital, which is about a 15-minute drive from the main campus. Then back here at the Christchurch campus, we've got oncology runs, orthopedic medicine, orthopedic surgery, ORL, plastic surgery, respiratory, and vascular. Cool. And then as you head into second year, you'll have some different runs that are available to you as well. So we have a second year cardiology run available, CTS. We have our community-based runs. So there's a selection of general practice options that you can select from. We have our psychiatry crisis specialty runs available at Hillmorton Hospital. We also have an older person's community run available as well. Our Christchurch campus, we've got haematology, nephrology, neurosurgery, opthal. We've got our orthopedic outpatients and orthopedic acute care, perioperative medicine, which is based at Burwood Hospital, rehab also at Burwood Hospital. We have a range of relief positions and they cross both medical and surgical areas. As Brooke mentioned, we've also got rural runs available. So that's based out at Ashburton Hospital. And we also have 4 second year runs available over at the West Coast as well. And then the last 2 is urology and vascular. So in second year, you're also able to apply to do a 6-month run in our specialties. And so their classes pediatrics, O&G, ED, and then more recently, we've also added an OAC, orthopedic acute care outpatient 6-month run, and also a psychiatry crisis resolution 6-month run as well. Perfect. So this next slide is to talk to you a little bit about how you select your runs here at Canterbury if you're successful. So here in Canterbury, we run a run block system. So what will happen is after you sign your offer letter, you'll be sent a SurveyMonkey link. And through that survey, you will see a slide similar to what you see here, which is a list of run block options. And as you can see down the side, it runs A to M. So there are 13 options there. And looking across the page horizontally, you'll see that there's 6 runs there. So the way these run blocks are designed is it's your first 4 runs in your first year, and then there's 2 runs there in your second year. So these run blocks are designed so that across your 2 years, you will do 2 medical runs, 2 surgical runs, and a community-based attachment, which is a requirement of the Medical Council of New Zealand. At the end of your first year, you will be sent a survey again, which will ask you to preference basically the remainder of your runs in your second year. And this is where you can choose to opt for one of the specialties that we mentioned if you're interested in that. But it does also in this run block, there's 2 of the runs there that you will be doing, and it just gives you a bit of flexibility for the other 6 months. It's important to note as well that you won't particularly do the runs in this order, but you will do them at some point through the first 2 years. Once you've selected your run block, you would rank them from 1 to 13, and we usually can give most people between options like their top 3. We're able to make come true for you, I guess. And then those runs we published at the end of October, which is when we publish all of our run allocations for the following RMO year. This is just an example of what it may look as in your first year and your second year.
So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about METU. METU is the Medical Education and Training Unit, which is a separate unit to the RDST, although the unit is co-located, and it's specifically intended to provide support and education to you as you're on your 2-year PGY 1 and 2 journey. What that involves is you are allocated a pre-vocational educational supervisor, and that's I'm one of those. I think we have about maybe 15 or 16 of those in Canterbury at the moment. All of us have no more than 10 PGY 1 and 2 house surgeons that we supervise. And we provide some continuity of care or continuity of training over your first 2 years. So whilst you'll rotate every 3 months through a different clinical rotation, you'll stay with your educational supervisor for 2 years. And we provide a little bit of pastoral care, a bit of oversight, a bit of guidance around career choice and helping to make decisions, for example, on what runs you might want to do in your PGY2 year. Every 3 months, you'll check in with your clinical supervisor. They're the consultant that's going to be responsible for you during your direct attachment. As I mentioned, you'll have the same supervisor through PGY 1 and 2, and you'll meet the educational supervisor usually towards the end of each run or maybe at the start of the next run. One thing that Canterbury also does, which is a little bit unique, is we also offer you an educational supervisor through PGY 3 and beyond. If you don't immediately start on a training program, which is obviously quite common not to, you'll also have an educational supervisor through your PGY 3 and 4 and perhaps beyond years. A really big part of what Metu is responsible for is organising your teaching. Teaching is not only an expectation of the Medical Council, but is also a really important part of your development as a junior doctor. And there are 2 dedicated teaching sessions every week. On a Wednesday afternoon is teaching for PGY1s, and on a Thursday lunchtime is teaching for PGY2s. That teaching is intended to be protected time, and there is an expectation that you won't be called back to the wards during that time, and an expectation that you can give your page to somebody else on the team that can cover you. And whilst it's not always possible, and we understand that, there is an expectation or a culture within the hospital that does happen to enable you to attend teaching as much as possible. So next slide is some examples of what actually happens in the teaching. There's a whole lot of different things that happen across the year, but one of the most enjoyable things for house surgeons is the scenario training. So these tend to be rapid fire scenarios around sick and deteriorating patients. And there's also site-specific scenarios. So out at Burwood, for example, in Hillmorton, which is the mental health campus, obviously there's slightly different things available there for patients who are very sick. So there's site-specific training around that too. And there's also training around cultural competency, building on the Mehana model through the mahi, which is the Māori Health Unit of the University of Otago, Christchurch. Also really enjoyable is the practical skill sessions. So this is actually learning to do things such as suturing, nasogastric tube placement, airway management, learning how to put in IV lines with the guide of ultrasound, lumbar punctures, and some of the practical skills with ophthalmology, such as using slit lamps and eye drops. So this is really, really well attended and really well supported by the SMOs that provide teaching in those sessions. There's also a number of other workshops that happen, for example, guided by pharmacy and also around the serious illness conversation guide. Orientation is something which is really important and helps to give you a really good start here in Christchurch. It's organised both by Metu and also by the RDST. It's a full week. You can see the dates are already locked in for 2025, and it's intended to be really practical. Historically, there's been feedback all around the country that often orientation doesn't really tell you what you actually need to know to start on your first day. So our orientation is really aimed at helping you get the information you need to actually start on the first day. And that's just practical things like having your logins for the computer programs, knowing how to use the computer programs, making sure you can access the computers. You'll also learn about the CTCs that was mentioned in the video at the start. They're the clinical team coordinators. These are senior nurses that are in the hospital after hours, so on all the evening and night shifts, and help to triage the pages and calls you get from the wards. And they're also present at the handovers and help to facilitate the handovers at shift changes. There's a bit of a house officer survival guide. You learn some tips about discharge summaries, and you actually spend a day in the last 1 or 2 days of your orientation actually working, or not working, really observing in the service that you'll join come the following Monday. We have a program called Checkmate, and these are RMOs and PGY2 and above that volunteer to be part of the Checkmate program. They're basically other house surgeons that have put their hand up to say they're happy to help out. They're a friendly face to ask questions, and they wear that lanyard. See, Sarah here is wearing one today. And so this is just part of our team culture of helping you all feel comfortable and at ease when you're working here in Canterbury. Metu has a few carrots it sort of dangles to help promote the great culture we have here in Canterbury. Every month, there's an RMO of the month. They get some kind of prize. I don't know what it is. Book voucher. There you go. Your name goes in the newsletter. RMOs are involved in our training committees. We regularly ask for feedback from end of run evaluations from house surgeons, and that feedback is really useful to help change things or improve things. There's a vocational pathways evening once a year where all the different specialties attend and showcase what they do to help you understand what career options are available. There's been an annual sponsored running event, and I mentioned the weekly newsletter.
So I'm obviously 4 months into my first year, and Sarah's 16 months into her house obviously is. But I guess a day in the life of a PGY1 will typically start with reviewing notes from overnight, nursing notes, OBS, and any blood results that have come back. And then there'll be a ward round generally. And this is all able to be done on our Cortex online system, which we're very grateful to have. And then you generally start your day with a ward round if you're in public, or I'm out at Hill Morton now, so our day works slightly differently. And we have reviews throughout the day.
Yeah, the Cortex system is really neat. I think a lot of the hospitals around New Zealand are all paper-based still, so it's like paper-based ward round notes, review notes, charting, whereas everything's online here in Christchurch, which is super handy. Everything's accessible from an iPad, so we can look at patients' observations, all of their investigation results, all their medications that they're currently on, all at the touch of our fingers on the iPads. So that was a huge thing that I found I wanted to have when I first started working. But generally, yeah, as Ollie said, day to day, you come in to prepare your ward round notes and have a look to see overnight whether anything's changed with your patients. And it's a great way of alerting your team as well. Ward rounds, depending on what area you're in, can vary from a couple of hours up to sort of half the day. And that's also dependent on how many patients you have at the time. And then after that, you generally run through your list of patients with your team. So whether that be your registrar, registrars, and sometimes your consultants as well. And then you basically create your job list. So you prioritize jobs that are more urgent. So if you need to call a specialty to get their input on a patient, you generally do that first. Changing any sort of medications, ordering investigations, and then later on, once you've done that sort of thing, you can start your discharge summaries, have your family meetings, those sorts of things. In terms of the rosters, like it varies across what runs you're on. So depending on whether you're on a medical run or a surgical run, will depend on how many hours you do each week.
Well, on psych, I've got no weekends and no long days, so I'm pretty happy at the moment.
Yeah.
But no, it's pretty good. And I think one of the main things of note is that with the online system, you can be quite efficient with your note taking and with discharges and navigating notes for those discharges. And I also find that the real collegial nature, especially in the specialties that I've done, in making sure that people get home on time. So I hardly ever stayed beyond what I was meant to finish by. And then also of note, just in terms of the training and teaching. So at least what I've been on so far, there's been run specific teaching that's been really helpful, and that's allowed you to focus on some of the specialized stuff that you're seeing each day today in your patients. And then also there's the Wednesday afternoon teaching, which has been really helpful for me, and I guess the Thursday lunchtime teaching for you. And one of the most, helpful things for me, so I was quite concerned about how I'd manage duty shifts. They seem to be a bit overwhelming. I guess you come from a TI environment where you're not so much making decisions by yourself. And so generally during the day, you've got a lot of support and decisions you make, and you've got all the help you could want. And then you're in this environment where you suddenly have a bit more autonomy. But what I realized is that you have a lot of support when you're on these duty shifts. And so all the registrars that I've called have been really helpful. A thing that the CDHB organised, which I thought was really helpful, was 4 weeks at the start of the year, 4 weeks or 6 weeks, where we had a buddy, and so you'd be called to see or review a patient, and they may be a bit more unwell than you thought they were, and you had this extra support from a PGY 2 or above to help you out. And the CTCs are incredible. So yeah, these guys have been on the box for years and years, and they're often first to the scene when a patient's deteriorating, and they're triaging jobs, so you don't have to review patients that don't really require review or can be dealt with by a CDC-led decision. It's just really helpful for reducing your workload, but also for helping you make decisions when you don't really know what to do, and you can ask them a question.
With the Cortex app, like for those who don't train in Christchurch currently, Cortex is an app that we communicate through as well. So as well as us having all of our notes from both the medical side of things, but also our NDT and nursing staff, we have the ability to message anyone within the hospital that are online on Cortex in regards to patients. The CTCs are also great. I found even in my PGY2 year that if I got 2 patients that are deteriorating at the same time and I don't know who to prioritize, I can easily call the CTC. I was the type of person when I first started off as a house officer that I wasn't extremely comfortable or confident in my abilities, and so I wanted a really supportive environment to start in. And that's exactly what I found here in Christchurch. And even if I wasn't confident about something, I'd be reassured that I've started doing the right things, and I could be guided on what to do further. So that was really, really nice having that there. So Christchurch has a lot to offer outside of work. So work's great here. You have a really supportive working environment, and you meet a lot of people here. Since it's such a big centre, it's so easy to make friends both inside and outside of work. One of the main reasons why I chose Christchurch was for the outside sort of stuff. I like snowboarding, even though people don't like me being a snowboarder, they like me to ski instead, but I love snowboarding. I like getting out to the beaches. I like going up the Port Hills. And there's just so much to do around the city. We've got a new pool and gym complex going up literally across the road. And once that's finished, hopefully within the next year or so, we'll have that, which would be like less than a 5-minute walk from the campus, running track, I think maybe, and some gym stuff. The nightlife here is awesome. We've got the Riverside Strip, which has a whole load of bars. And different sort of hangout spots, heaps of different sort of food options in at the Riverside Market.
So we've got a new hospital at Christchurch Hospital, Waipapu, which is pretty beautiful. You feel like there's some quite nice communal spaces. I haven't been out to Ashburn on the West Coast, but I know that a lot of people are quite keen to get out there, and so the opportunities are there for PGY2s and 3s to get out and be in a more rural centre and be even more hands-on and more autonomous than what we would expect at PGY1. We've talked about Cortex and the great things that offers, and MedChart and the ease of charting through MedChart. I remember feeling a bit intimidated by MedChart and all the things that I had to do when prescribing. And then there's a lot of almost shortcuts to make charting easier, and a lot of people who are there around you to support you with. And the food's pretty good at Christchurch. I misread that as like an online menu. So no, and the salad bar, which you can like I often pick and choose and make multiple salads out of one.
I've had some friends that have done some of the West Coast and Ashburton runs this year. If you're really into sort of like the more emergent ED type situations or GP, rural medicine, those sorts of things, those are really, really good runs to try and test the waters, see whether you do like it.
I've gone into the RDSD office a few times to discuss leaves, and I've just found you guys very approachable, and I feel like that sometimes people are concerned about whether they'll get leave or not, but I think the best way is just to meet with people in person, because it's harder to do things over email when they don't know when your gaps fit in and their gaps kind of thing.
You guys are going to talk to the second point, but yeah, like you don't have to do, we won't be doing nights in your first 6 months as a first year, unless you do general medicine in quarter 1, in which case you will commence working nights from quarter 2. I think you guys talked a little bit about the rosters vary. So like, obviously there's the odd first year roster where you don't do any out of hours, which is amazing. But yeah, they tend to sort of vary between a 1 to 7, 1 and 8 weekend. We're obviously trying really hard as the population grows, as complexities grow, to try and keep up as much as possible with, staffing the rosters and increasing after hours. And we work really closely with, the RMOs and the clinical team coordinators to try and make sure we're putting as much investment as possible into the rosters.
Yeah, no, RDST are just always very approachable. It's like an open door policy. Yeah.
I think we're unique in that we share the office with the medical education training unit as well. So you guys are often popping down to see your supervisors.
Like, as Ollie alluded to earlier on, as part of your run, you'll have run specific teaching. So I'm on cardiology at the moment as a floating house officer. So we get protected sort of journal club and also some cardiothoracic meetings.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So that's the end of our full presentation.
We've got quite a few questions. So the first one, how does Canterbury promote and continue to build cultural competency?
Yeah, I think Giovanni answered some of that during his presentation. So it's part of your clinical orientation in your first week when you commence here at Canterbury. And Metu continue to, I guess it features in teaching as well, the PGY 1 and PGY 2, and Metu promote any courses that RMOs are eligible to attend. Anything else, Dan?
No, I think that's right. Yeah,
Yep.
It's a really important part of the culture that we value here in Canterbury.
Cool, thank you. Next question, what supports do you have in place for Māori doctors, and do you have any affirmative hiring practices for Māori, i.e. preference Māori, or are committed to reviewing Māori applications?
Yeah, on the recruitment part, we absolutely follow the Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand guidelines about preferencing Māori candidates for positions. In terms of ongoing support, my understanding is that there is, when you commence here as a Māori doctor, you're connected in with a group of doctors who meet regularly and support each other through the workforce.
Perfect, thank you. In our cover letter, would you like it to state Canterbury is our first choice? Question for ACE representative, are we allowed to write in the cover letter XYZ as our first preference? So I'll answer that. No, so it's all confidential to all the districts, so please don't say that you want you are ranking Canterbury first. It's more like you should be expressing how much you want to work for Canterbury. Are medical students who have trained in Christchurch given preference over other students?
They used to be, but we changed that practice last year, so we consider all applicants equally, regardless of where you've completed your TIE.
How competitive are the placements in rural hospitals, Ashburton and West Coast?
It varies each year, to be honest. I think at the minute West Coast is a lot more competitive than Ashburton. But look, we do our best to try and give everybody their at least first or second preference through run allocations. So when it comes to the point of ranking for PGY 2, when you'd be ranking your community-based attachment, we ask that the house officers provide as much information as possible about why they want the runs. And they're welcome to pop in the office and discuss it with us as well. But I think, like, if you want to go to the West Coast or Ashburton, you've got a high chance of getting at least one of those for your community-based attachment.
Okay. Would you like us to address the I care values in our cover letter?
Yeah, I think I can answer the next two questions together. I think in your cover letter, you do want to keep it to one page. I think we've alluded a lot about the support function here in Canterbury. We want to keep people close to their family and their friends. So putting that sort of thing in your cover letter, I wouldn't be exceeding one page. Obviously, we get a lot of applications, so it's hard for us to sit down and consider every single cover letter when it's 3 pages long. So keep it brief, to the point about why Canterbury is the right place for you.
Perfect, thank you. Can you elaborate on the annual sponsored running event?
I think the person that organised the running event was supposed to be on the panel, but isn't today. Unfortunately, they're otherwise engaged. So I don't know if anyone participated in the running event. Do you have any?
Is it the City to Serve?
No, I think it was
It's a-
park.
It's a
and-
run around Hagley Park, but it's, yeah, all the RMOs can basically participate in it, but it's like a little bit of a fun run, I think.
Yeah. There's no huge prize. You might get RMO of the month if you're lucky. Yeah.
Great, thank you. How important is attending orientation between 6th and 10th January if you are overseas?
I would say it's vital. These RMOs that will not be here for orientation would fall into the late start category. It's a big week where we organise a lot of people to come and speak to you. So our priority is that you attend that week of orientation, or you're simply not going to get the experience otherwise, because it's impossible for us to reorganise every single speaker for one individual.
And could I just reiterate there? I mean, it's a big step becoming a doctor. It's a big step up from medical school, and you really want to give yourself the best chance of starting off on the right foot. So I think attending orientation is an important investment in your early career.
Yeah, I don't know about Ollie, but we found it very, very helpful that first week. It allowed us to get settled into the environment. It allowed us to find out from other more senior house officers about how things ran. There's some tips and tricks that are talked about that are really, really helpful when you first start out. It's daunting enough starting a new job, but when you're responsible for patients that aren't necessarily well all the time, it's really great to have a number of different people in different areas, both medical and multidisciplinary, as well as additional sort of acute demand services and services associated with the hospital. It's nice to be involved in that and learning about them before you start. I think as you say, it's quite vital for when you start. Yeah,
there's a big learning curve in those first few weeks, so they sort of want to try and take as much support as possible in that orientation week. Definitely help achieve that, and whether that's even small things like where do I find one thing, or what database do I need to use. It's just very helpful that you don't have to overthink those things, and it's something you've just been told in that first week.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. We've got 2 questions. I might be able to answer the second one. How many PGY1 positions are available for 2025? And then how many people applied for it as their first choice last year?
I think that's a hard question for us to answer. So we don't know our PGY numbers for next year yet. We suspect we'll be around 65 again, but we're hopeful for more. In terms of who ranked us first, we don't find out your ranking, so I couldn't answer that question. I don't know, Georgina, if you can add anything to that.
We do have that information, but I cannot remember the number on top of my head. So you are welcome to flick me an email at rmo@acenz. acenz.net.nz. Yeah, I don't have your name because it's anonymous, so please get in touch with me and I can find that out for you. Final question. Thanks for the interesting webinar. Does Christchurch prioritise Otago graduates over Auckland grads?
Yeah, again, same as the TI year. We used to prioritise Otago grads, but not anymore. Everyone's treated equal.
Excellent, thank you. So if you have any further questions, you're welcome to flick me an email or get in touch with Canterbury directly if it's regarding working at the hospital, anything you want to know. We will now close off with a closing karakia. Kia hora te marino. Kia whakapapa pounamu te moana. Hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai. Tātou I a tātou katoa. Hui e tai kie. Thank you, everybody.